Hello everyone, in this lesson we're going to be doing absolute value inequalities. Now some of you are like, dude, Kevin, my home dog, what are inequalities? Well, first of all, what are absolute value inequalities, So we've looked at absolute value before, like when we have equations like that. These funny lines are called absolute value, and we've looked at equations with them where we have something like that. Then in other lessons, we've looked at inequalities, where you've got these funny little symbols that look like that, or like that, or like that, or like that. So, okay, now we're just going to make maths even more fun. That was sarcasm, by the way. And we're going to combine them together. So we're going to get stuff that looks like that. So we have absolute value, okay, and we have inequalities all in one. Amazing, hey? So that's sarcasm again. I know that students get intimidated by this. I mean, it is looking quite scary. I mean, we've got absolute value mixed with inequalities. How much worse does it get? Well, in this lesson, I'm going to try to show you that it isn't actually that bad, and we're going to do quite a lot of examples. I'm also going to show you a few little tricks that make it easier than it needs to. Well, easier than what you've maybe seen before. Right, so what we're going to do, let's ignore this number line for now. We'll get back to that later. Let's quickly write this down, v minus 2 bigger than 2. What I want you to do for now is completely ignore whatever's inside here, okay? I'm literally just going to take that out. And I want you to do a little exercise with me, and trust me, I'm not the type of person that makes you do these little exercises unless I know it's going to help you, okay? So trust me. Do this exercise with me. What I want you to quickly do, and you might want to pause the video, but first listen to what I want you to do. I want you to think of all the different types of numbers, like come up with at least like 6 or 7 or 8 numbers that you could put down over here, so that when you take the absolute value, you get a number that is bigger than 2. I'll give you one example. The number 4, that's a nice one, because if you take the absolute value of 4, it is equal to 4, and that's bigger than 2. So now I want you to come up with some more, but I want you to come up with some negative numbers as well. Okay, so maybe you want to pause the video and give that a try. Come up with some positive numbers and some negative numbers that you could plug in here. Trust me, by doing this, you're going to get a much better idea of how this all works. All right, so welcome back. I hope that you at least tried to come up with some numbers. So what you may have noticed is that, for example, the number 5, well, I'm going to do this exercise with you, just for those of you that maybe didn't do the exercise, although I really wish you would have, but it's okay. So let's say, for example, the number 7. With the number 7, when you take the absolute value of 7, is it bigger than 2? Yes, it is. Okay, what about the number 1? That doesn't work, because if you take the absolute value of 1, let's actually make this a bit more organized. So let's say we choose a random number. Okay, and then we put it in the absolute value, and then we'll see, is it bigger than 2? And then we'll just say yes or no. Okay, so let's choose a random number 4. What is the absolute value of 4? Well, that is just 4. So we'll do it like that. And is that bigger than 2? Yes. So we put a smiley face. Okay, what about the absolute value of 1? What does that give you? Well, that just gives you 1. So is that bigger than 2? No. That's a sad face. Come on. What about the number minus 6? Well, haha, if you take the absolute value of minus 6, it actually gives you positive 6. So that's a yes. That works. Okay, what about the number minus 1? Well, the absolute value of minus 1 is 1. So that's a no. What about the absolute value of 3? Well, the absolute value of 3 is just 3, so that's a yes. Okay, so I'm sure you're starting to get an idea of what numbers we can put inside here. We can put numbers like minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, minus 6, positive 3, positive 5, positive 8, positive 9. Any of those numbers, when you take the absolute value, it's going to be bigger than minus 2. So what I want you to quickly do now is draw a number line, okay? And what I want you to do is, this number here is actually really important. I want you to put the positive and the negative of that number down. So the negative first and then the positive, because that's how it is on the number line. Now, which numbers, where do these numbers come from? Do they come from interval A, B, or C? Or let's actually, A and A always go together. So do these numbers, are they going to come from interval A, B, A or B? Well, these numbers, they seem to be coming from the interval A, right? It's all the numbers that are bigger than 2, like 3, 5, 9, and 8. But then it's all the numbers that are smaller than -2. Remember, when you go this way, it means smaller than. So that would be numbers like -3, -4, -5. So Kevin, are you saying that -3 is smaller than -2? I'm like, yes. And then you like, yeah, but 3 is bigger than 2, bro. Yeah, but remember, when you're going with negatives, it's different, right? -3 is actually smaller than -2. So, okay, so it looks like these numbers are coming from interval A, okay? So it's all of these numbers and all of these numbers. If you choose any number inside here, then it won't work. For example, if you choose the number 1, it doesn't work, because as soon as you take the absolute value of that, it won't ever be bigger than 2. Right, so it looks like whatever's inside here has to be something that is in interval A, okay? So we could say that whatever's inside here must be something that is smaller than -2, which is this part, or it can be anything bigger than 2, which is this part, or bigger than 2. So what I'll now do is I'll just take whatever we had inside there and I'll just write it there. And now what we can do is we say that whatever's inside there is allowed to be smaller than -2. So let's write that down. V minus 2 can be smaller than -2. Okay, that's our first equation. And then our second equation will say V minus 2 can be anything bigger than +2. There we go. And all that we need to go do now is just go solve this one and solve this one. Okay, it will make more sense as we go along. We're going to do quite a lot of it doesn't make sense. Oh, it does. We're going to do quite a lot of examples in this lesson. So we're just going to solve now. So we're going to take this -2 over to the other side, and so that means -2 plus 2, and so V would be smaller than 0. And then for this one, you're just going to take this -2 over to the other side, like that, and so we get that over there. So what this tells us is that V is smaller than 0. So now we can go to our number line and say smaller than 0. And then they're saying V is bigger than 4. So we go to 4, and then we're bigger than 4. And so that would be the answer for this one. Okay? And as we go along, we're going to get a little bit faster, and I'm going to, you're going to get the hang of it. Trust me. If you don't have the hang of it right now, that is perfectly normal. When I was in school and university, very often I did not get it the first time. Okay? I was a bit slow, actually, compared to some people, but what made me successful was that I never gave up. Like, I would sit there until 12 o'clock every night when I was in university, trying to get that in my head and understand it, so that when I got back to college or university or whatever the next day, I was like ready for it. Even though I was really tired, but I did it. Now we're going to speed it up a little bit. Okay, so what you do is you make sure that you have the absolute value by itself. Is it already by itself? Yes, it is. Okay, then what you do is you draw yourself your own little number line. I'm not talking about this number line. That's only for the answer. And what you do is you take this number and you put the positive of that number and you take the negative of that number. Then we've got interval A and A, which they always go together. And then you've got interval B, which is in between the -5 and the 5. And I want you to try think about which intervals would work inside this absolute value symbol. So let's say the absolute value symbol is empty, some mysterious numbers that go inside there. Now, which numbers are going to work? Is it going to be the numbers from intervals A? Well, those will be numbers like, I don't know, -6, -7, and 6 and 7. Let's see, would they work? Well, if you put -7 in here, if you take the absolute value of -7, it just gives you +7. So that doesn't work because we want the answer to be smaller than 5. So we want this part to be smaller than 5. So -7 isn't going to work because when you take the absolute value of -7, it becomes +7. Okay, so these two intervals are just not going to work. Trust me, they always go together. So if the one doesn't work, the other one doesn't work. You can pause and you can test me on that, but it's how it is, okay? So the answer is definitely going to be somewhere in between. So the numbers that are going to work are going to be between -5 and 5. So what numbers can we think of between -5 and 5? Well, numbers like -2. Because when you take the absolute value of -2, it just gives you a +2, but that is smaller than 5. What about the number 3? Well, when you take the absolute value of 3, that is just 3, and so that also works. So the numbers that we are going to want inside this absolute value symbol are going to be any numbers between -5 and 5. So what you can do is you can say that this thing over here must be somewhere between -5 and 5. So the way that you write that is like this. I'll explain it now. So what we are doing is we are saying that this 5n, which is whatever's inside the absolute value, must be bigger than -5. Okay, bigger than -5, so that means -5 and bigger, which is all of those numbers. But at the same time, it must also be smaller than 5, so it must also be these numbers. So it must be all of the numbers in between there. And now we just need to go and solve this over here. Now, if you haven't watched the videos on compound inequalities where we look at and, then you need to go check that out, because that's what this is. This is a and or conjunction kind of compound inequality. So what we need to do is we just need to try and get this middle letter by itself. So we need to divide by 5, but that means we're going to have to divide everywhere by 5. And so what we'll end up with is n, and then -5 divided by 5 is -1, and then 5 divided by 5 is 1, and there is our answer. Our answer is between -1 and 1, so we put a solid dot at -1 and another solid dot at +1. Why solid? Because it's equal to as well, and then we are just going to join them up, because it says that n must be any number bigger than -1 but also smaller than 1, so it's all of that. Alright, so now we're going to start moving a bit faster, and you're going to start noticing the pattern. So step 1 is the absolute value by itself. Yes, it is. Step 2, draw yourself a little number line, your own number line, not the answer's number line, that comes later. And you take the positive and the negative of that number. You make your interval, so A and A, they always go together, and then B. Alright, so what we do now is we ignore whatever's inside here, and we ask ourselves, what numbers would we want to put inside there so that when you take the absolute value, it'll be smaller than 6? Smaller than or equal to 6. Well, let's try interval A's so long. So interval A, I don't know, what numbers are smaller than -6? I don't know, -10 maybe? Let's try that. If you put the absolute value of -10, well, that gives you +10, and that is not smaller than 6. So this one doesn't work. Because of that, that also doesn't work. So the answer, or the interval that we are going to be interested in for this question, is going to be the numbers between -6 and +6. I'll prove it to you. Maybe some of you are like, how do I know this, Kevin? So, for example, the number -3. If I put the number -3 in an absolute value, it gives me 3. Is that smaller than 6? Yes, it is. It's perfect. Trust me, this stuff works, guys. So we are interested in all the things between -6 and +6. So the numbers that you'd want to put here would be numbers like, I don't know, -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, +2, +3, +4, +5. All of those types of numbers are going to be perfect, because when you take the absolute value, it will be less than or equal to 6. And you can test me on that. You can pause and give that some thought. So we would like all the numbers in the B interval, so between -6 and 6. So what we can do now is we can put the 6 plus x back, and we can say that this 6 plus x must be something between -6 and 6. So the way that you write that is you say 6 plus x must be something bigger than -6 and smaller than 6. Okay? So all that we're doing is we're saying that this part here, which is the part that's in the absolute value, we're saying that whatever this is, it must be between minus 6, and 6, because we said interval B is the correct one. And now you just need to solve. So you need to get rid of the 6. So you need to take it that way, and you need to take it that way. So when you take it to the right-hand side, it's going to become a minus 6. And when you take it to this left-hand side, it also becomes a minus 6. So you end up getting minus 12 over here and 0 over here. Now we can go put those numbers on the number line. So minus 12 with a solid circle. Why? Because they have a bigger than and equal to, and then a 0. So where's the 0? There it is. Now they said that x can be any number bigger than minus 12. Okay, so that's this way. And smaller than 0. So that's that way. So that means we'll just join these up together. Like that. Step 1, is the absolute value by itself? Yes, it is. You can see that it's just chilling there by itself. This is actually a very quick question. This question has no solution. Let me explain. We know that absolute values can never be negative. Now, what this question is telling us, it's saying, where is this absolute value smaller than minus 51? Well, it can never be smaller than minus 51 because this is an absolute value, and an absolute value can never become a negative. So this question is no solution. That's quite a boring one. Sorry about that. Didn't see that coming. Step 1, is the absolute value by itself? No, it is not. So we are not going to go take the number 25 and put it on a number line. We have to first make sure, get the absolute value alone. So this 5 needs to go. So how are we going to get this 5 over to that side? Well, are we going to times, divide, plus, or minus? Well, we're always going to do the opposite of what's already there. So at the moment, this 5 and this absolute value, they are busy multiplying. So we'll do the opposite of that and we'll divide. So we'll end up with the following. 25. Well, we'll divide both sides by 5. Let me just show it like that first. And so we end up with that over there. Okay. And so there we go. Now we have the absolute value by itself, like we had in previous questions. So now what we can go and do is we can make ourselves our own little number line, and we take the positive and the negative of this number, so positive 5 and negative 5, and then we have our intervals, so A and A, they always go together, and then B. Now we need to try to figure out where we are. What numbers do we want? So we ignore what's inside here, so we just put a little question mark. We don't know what numbers are inside there. And we ask ourselves, what numbers could we put there so that it becomes bigger than 5? Would it be the numbers in this interval? Well, I don't know. Let's try one. Let's try minus 10. If you put minus 10 into that interval, what does that give you? Well, that actually gives you 10. And 10 is bigger than 5. So this interval works. That was a good one. Obviously, this one also works, but I'll prove it to you. Let's take the number 8. If you put the number 8 inside the absolute value, it'll give you 8, which is bigger than 5. So this works. So these two are the ones that we want. Are some of you a bit skeptical and you're like, yeah, but Kevin, how do I know that the numbers here won't work? I'll prove it to you. Let's choose a number. Let's choose minus 2, because that's somewhere between minus 5 and 5. So if you take the absolute value of minus 2, it gives you positive 2. But that is not bigger than 5. 2 is not bigger than 5. So these numbers in the B interval, they are not going to work. So the numbers that we want are the numbers that are in the A interval. Okay, so we're going to take the numbers in the A interval. So it's all the numbers to the left of minus 5 and to the right of 5. Right, now how do we do this? Well, we're going to say that this thing here, so that thing there, can be all the numbers that are smaller than minus 5. So we'll say smaller than or equal to, because there's an equal to sign, and we're going to say smaller than or equal to minus 5. Because think about it, the number minus 6, minus 7, minus 8, those are smaller than minus 5. So we're saying here that this thing here is allowed to be smaller than minus 5. Then we say or 5n minus 10 can be any number that is bigger than 5. In some of the previous examples when we were looking at interval b, that's when you can sort of link them all together. That's when you can do that like weird thing that's like 5n minus 10, bigger than minus 5, smaller than 5. But that's not what we're doing for this one. In this one, the two intervals we are using is interval a and interval a. So it's separated. So we separate them like this and like this. And so now we're going to go and solve each of these. So I'm going to start with this one. So I'm just going to take the minus 10 over to the other side. So it's going to end up becoming minus 5 plus 10. So we're going to end up with minus 5 plus 10 is 5. And then we're going to divide both sides by 5. And so we end up with n is smaller than or equal to 1. So we can go put the little 1 on our number line with a solid circle because it's included, and they're saying that n is smaller than or equal to 1. Okay, so we drew it that way. Perfect. Now we're going to go do this one. So that says that 5n is, that should be a bigger than or equal to sign. And so that's going to become 5 plus 10, and so we end up with 5n bigger than or equal to 15. And so if you divide by 5, whoops, why am I dividing there? Divide by 5, we say that n is bigger than or equal to 3. So we go to the 3 with a solid circle, and we know that n is bigger than that, and so we're there. So we have two separate intervals, just like we had two separate intervals over here. It's only when you use the interval b when your answer is going to have one interval in the final answer, like that. Okay? Step 1, is the absolute value by itself? Well, no, it's not, because this minus 9 is not, this minus 9 needs to go to the other side, right? When I say by itself, I mean this must be alone on one side of the inequality sign. It mustn't have numbers mixed with it. Sorry, this number's mixed with it. Okay, so we need to take this minus 9 over, so we're going to end up with the following. So minus 1 plus 9. Okay, and then let's just simplify that a bit. So minus 1 plus 9 is 8. There we go. Now you go draw yourself a little timeline. And you take the positive and the negative of that number. Then you have interval A and then B. And you need to try figure out what numbers could you put inside here. So let's just say that we don't know what's inside there. What numbers could you put inside here and it will give you an answer that is bigger than 8 after you take the absolute value? Is it going to be the numbers in intervals A, which is numbers like, I don't know, minus 10, minus 9, minus 11, minus 12, and then on this side it's numbers like 9, 10, 15, 100, whatever, any number that's bigger than 8. If you put any of these numbers inside the absolute value, is it going to be bigger than 8 or won't it be bigger than 8? Well, I'll choose any one. So let's say minus 12. If you take the absolute value of minus 12, it gives you 12. And is that bigger than 8? Yes, it is. So interval A is the one that we want. So interval A will be the correct one. And trust me, you don't need to go check that B doesn't work. You don't need to go be like, yeah, but I'm not sure. Trust me, trust me, trust me. I'm giving you some little hacks here. It's going to save you a lot of time. It's gonna, if this A works, then this A also works, and this one will never work. Okay. So then what numbers can we put inside here? Well, it can be any numbers that are here. So those are numbers that are smaller than minus 8. So any numbers smaller than minus 8. Okay. But it could also be numbers that are bigger than 8. So we can say, or any numbers that are bigger than 8. Okay, so now what we do is we said that whatever's inside the absolute value can be smaller than minus 8 or bigger than 8. So now we need to go take whatever's inside the absolute value, which is 4r plus 4, and we can say that it must be smaller than minus 8, but we're actually going to say smaller than and equal to minus 8, because there's a equal to sign in all of these. Okay, so that takes care of these numbers, because those are smaller than minus 8. Then we say or, and then we say the 4r plus 4 can also be any number bigger than 8. So we can say bigger than, but we'll say also equal to 8. And that takes care of all of these numbers. Sorry, so we took care of the minus 8 part over there, and now we're taking care of the 8 part over there. And now we're just going to go solve each of these individually. So that means that we can say 4r is now bigger than minus 8 minus 4. So that means 4r is smaller than minus 12. Then we divide both sides by 4. And so we end up with r is smaller than or equal to minus 3. So we go to minus 3 on a number line, make it a solid circle because we got the equal to sign as well, and it's smaller than, so we go that way. Now we're going to go solve this one. So we say 4r is bigger than or equal to 8 minus 4, and then we end up with 4r bigger than or equal to 4, and then we divide both sides by 4, and you should end up with r is bigger than or equal to 1. So we go to the 1, we make a solid circle, and it's bigger than, so we go that way. Here's our last example. So is the absolute value by itself? No, it's not, because this minus 9 needs to go to the other side. Remember, when we say by itself, we want the absolute value on one side of the inequality sign by itself. Okay, so we need to get rid of that 9, so let's do that quickly. So we'll say 8 plus 9, and so that's 8 plus 9, which is 17. Okay, so now when the absolute value is by itself, like this, then you can take this number, go put it on a number line. So we just say minus 17 and positive 17. You have your intervals, A, and then B. And now we just got to figure out what numbers could you put inside here so that it's smaller than 17. So let's pretend we don't even know what's inside there. So you got to try to figure this out. So the numbers at A over here would be like minus 20, minus 21, minus 100, all of those. And the numbers here would be like 21, 30, any number bigger than 17. And then the numbers here would be like, I don't know, minus 5, 10. So what numbers should we put inside here so that when you take the absolute value, it'll be smaller than or equal to 17? Well, it won't be these numbers, because I mean, if you put minus 21, that gives you 21 when you do the absolute value, and that's not smaller than 17, so that's not what we want. So A is not going to work in this example. B will work. If you take any number in B, for example, minus 10 or minus 5, if you take the absolute value, that is 5, and that is smaller than 17. So for this question, the interval that we want is B. So what we now do is we can say that this part here, whatever's, so remember we said that the numbers that can go inside here can be any number in interval B. So it can be any number between minus 17 and positive 17, right? Because it's from minus 17 up to 17. So the way that we write this one, we don't use the or. What we do is we say 1 minus 4x, which is this part here. We say that that can be any number between minus 17 and 17. So you say bigger than minus 17, but at the same time smaller than positive 17. Okay, so that's how you write that one. And so now this question you need to solve by getting this, or this x by itself. So step 1, we are going to take this, this positive one, we're going to take it to the left and we're going to take it to the right. So we're going to end up with the following: minus 1 on that side and, whoopsie, minus 1 on that side. So we end up with minus 4x smaller than or equal to 16 and bigger than or equal to minus 18. Sure, okay. And now we're going to divide. Now we're going to divide by minus 4. Now remember that one lesson I showed you guys with inequalities, and we said with inequalities, when you divide with a negative, you switch the sign. Okay, so I'm going to quickly move this up to here. Right, so we need to divide everything by minus 4. So you see we are dividing with a negative, so we will have to flip the sign for everything. Okay, so 18 divided by 4, I think that'll give us 4.5 or like 9 point, I'm going to say 4.5, and it'll be positive 4.5. Okay, but now you flip the sign, so it switches. And then this part here just becomes x, and then we flip the sign, and then what is that? 16 divided by negative 4, which is minus 4. And this would be our answer. We're saying that x can be any number between minus 4, so minus 4 with a solid, and 4.5, which would be here. And so we're saying that x can be bigger than minus 4, so that would go that way. But then x must also be smaller than 4.5, so that would go that way. So then what we do is we just join them up. Like that. Whoops, I shouldn't technically go over there. Some of you might be like, hey, you can't do that. So there's the answer over there.